Coming up on Dispatch tonight, your layout photos, the question of the week, and a big shout out, starting right now. Good evening. You're watching Dispatch, the weekly variety show for model railroaders. I'm Roy Smith. I'd like to welcome those of you who are here in the studio audience and all of you out there on YouTube. We've got a great show lined up for you, so don't go away. We'll be right back after this brief message. On this channel, we share the world's greatest hobby with you in Dispatch every Tuesday night and layout updates every Saturday morning right here. Don't miss out. Be sure to subscribe. Okay, as I said, we have your layout photos, the question of the week, and a big shout out here on Dispatch tonight. First up, your layout photos. Many of you posted photos of your layouts this week in a Facebook group called the N-Scale Union Pacific Evanston Subdivision Group. As always, I have brought your photos over here to Dispatch to share with everyone during the show, and here they are. After the show, go over to the Facebook group, join the group, and post a photo of your layout there. I will put a link down below that will take you to the group. You will know you're at the right place when you see this photo of Echo Canyon on my layout. Next up on tonight's show, the question of the week. And this week's question is, have you ever left the hobby of model railroading for a long time and then come back to it, perhaps years later? And if so, what brought you back to the hobby? I gotta tell you, I've enjoyed reading your responses to this question more than ever before. I've tabulated your responses, and as this chart shows, a vast majority of you have stopped being active in the hobby at some point in time during your lives, often for decades, before returning to it. What took you away from the hobby? Well, it was a variety of events and circumstances in life. Many of you said that interest in girls took you away from model trains as teenagers. Later, college, marriage, kids, and a job often kept you away. Sometimes health issues kept you away. And often a lack of money, time, and space for a layout kept you away from the hobby. Throughout your time away from the hobby, it sometimes felt like you had lost interest in it. And what brought you back to the hobby? Here are some of the things you said brought you back. You rediscovered the hobby on YouTube, Facebook, or elsewhere on the internet. You were now older and perhaps retired, and you now had more money, time, and space for a train layout. Perhaps your kids had grown up and moved out, leaving you with the space you needed. Some of you found the trains which you had packed away in storage years before. In some cases, visiting a friend's layout or a club or going to a train show rekindled your interest in the hobby. And when you came back to the hobby, many of you were amazed by how much better model trains had become. But perhaps you never really left the hobby in a sense. Perhaps you weren't building and operating a layout during all of those years, but somewhere in the back of your mind, you were still a model railroader. And when you came back to the hobby, you did so with a passion. I guess it's true what they say, once a model railroader, always a model railroader. Your responses to this question really resonated with me because, like so many of you, I also left the hobby for a long time, almost 30 years, before coming back to it. I loved my model trains when I was a kid, but left it all behind as a teenager. I came back to model trains for a few very brief periods of time as a young adult, and later on I did come back to the hobby for a couple of years in the mid-1980s when I built an N-scale layout based on Conrail in central Pennsylvania. But my military career made it difficult to pursue the hobby effectively, and the layout that I built in the mid-1980s had to be dismantled during a move. After that, I stayed away from the hobby for almost 30 years until 2014, by which time I was well into retirement. What brought me back? Well, as I mentioned in previous videos, I stumbled upon some photos of Echo Canyon, Utah on the internet in January 2014. I noticed right away that the Union Pacific Railroad runs through Echo Canyon. That's all it took, those amazing photos. Right away I began to plan for my current layout, and I began to actually build it in April 2014. I've been at it for nearly 6 years now, and today Echo Canyon exists on my layout. It seems like I've barely begun to do the work that needs to be done, but I've never been happier in my adult life than I am right now. I am happy because of the layout, and I am happy because I can share the hobby with all of you. Okay, we do have a question for the coming week, and here it is. Why do you think model railroading is the world's greatest hobby? What is it about the hobby that makes it so wonderful? Post your responses to this question in the comments section down below. I will share them in Dispatch next week. Again, the question for the coming week is, why do you think model railroading is the world's greatest hobby? And now it's time for tonight's big shout out. And tonight's big shout out goes to Dale Bass and his N-scale PRR layout. Dale models the Pennsylvania Railroad in the 1950s, and his channel features layout and rail fanning videos. Dale hosts a Saturday morning show called Coffee and Trains. In his show, he runs trains, he tells you what he's doing on his layout, and he shares charming stories about the people, places, and history on his layout. I contacted Dale, and he said that he really loves model trains, and he enjoys hanging out with like-minded people in the hobby. his model railroad friends actually show up in amusing ways on his layout. I really like Dale's layout and his videos, and I think you will too. So let's go over and take a look at his layout.
Morning, hoggers. It's Sunday morning coffee and trains. We got our coffee at Lulu's Trackside Diner. It's Sunday, August the 8th, 1954. Got some mixed freight here. Catching us a Nalco AS10 with a westbound local easing through Montevideo. Looks like we got us an Erie run through freight running on board trackage. We got some rail fanners here. This is the Roundhouse Model Railroad Club doing their annual rail fanning weekend in Wintuna. There's local freight moving through Wintuna. Yep. There's Roy Hardwick, Container Man 68. Looks like he's going into Cousin Vinny's Cucina for lunch. Have some lasagna and cheesecake. Always glad everybody joined me. Coffee and trains.
Okay, you've seen a bit of Dale's layout right here on Dispatch tonight. Be sure to go over to his channel and see the rest of it. And if you haven't subscribed to his channel yet, be sure to do that too. And don't forget to tell Dale that Roy Smith sent you. I will put a link to his channel down below. Dale, I like your layout and the stories you tell about it. Thanks for sharing the hobby with the rest of us. Now, if you still haven't seen my latest layout update, I urge you to go over and watch it after Dispatch ends tonight. It's called Under the Layout 4, a tour of my model railroad benchwork. In the video, I take you back under the layout one more time to see the benchwork from the east end to the west end of the layout. I will put a link down below that will take you directly to it. Be sure to join me again for my next layout update on Saturday, and of course next Tuesday night for Dispatch. I'd like to thank all of you in the studio audience for being here. We're going to have coffee and donuts after the show tonight. And to all of you out there on YouTube, thanks for letting me share the world's greatest hobby with you. Remember, there are tons of other videos for you to watch right here on this channel. In fact, you can go directly to two of them just by clicking over here. It's always a pleasure to hang out with you model railroaders because you are my best friends in the whole world. I'm Roy Smith. Until next time, happy railroading.